explain this spreadsheet here. Let me start off by saying this originally is not my spreadsheet. It's a version of this guy's spreadsheet. Cutting It Close is his YouTube name. I really recommend watching this video and subscribing to him. He does a really good job explaining chip load, feeds and speeds, all that stuff. So it's basically like a spin-off of his spreadsheet. And the reason I made a spin-off is because some of the standards and like reference material for chip load is specifically for industrial machines. So this column is called industry standard. So when you Google something like CNC feeds and speeds chart, like these are the numbers that are going to come up. So I have this here just for reference for calculating some math below. And the reason these are all divide by zero errors is because I need to populate these yellow columns. And I'll do that in a second. As I'm explaining this spreadsheet, I'll be doing some examples along the way. Jump into this next section. So these are the manufacturer suggested feeds and speeds. So when you buy like a bit from Amana or Bits and Bits or a Whiteside or Amazon even, there'll be a sheet that tells you like the feed rate in inches per minute and the RPMs, right? That'll also have information like the number of flutes and all that stuff. So I have an example here. This is just on Bits and Bits. It's a 1/4 inch downcut bit. And I came down to feeds and speeds. And it looks like that for hardwoods, softwoods, and MDF, the RPM should be 16,000 and the feed rate should be 120 to 150 inches per minute. So let's split that difference and call that 135 and then 16,000. So 135 and then 2 flutes. So now this is where this gentleman, Timber Falls, kind of discusses like an issue. Effectively, this spreadsheet originally belonged to this guy, but it uses Timber Falls methodology. So I also recommend watching this video and subscribing to him because it kind of talks about how, this chip load chart is for industrial machines. And then the feeds and speeds on this website for all manufacturers they're really conservative because the business wants to eventually burn out your bits so that you come back and buy more, right? So there's got to be an optimal range. They're not able to operate in this range, but this range from the manufacturer is just a little too conservative, so you can get more out of your bits. That's essentially what this does. So the industry recommends that your chip load for a 1/4 inch bit on hardwood should be between 0.009 and 0.011, whereas the manufacturer says your chip load should be about 0.004. So there's a sweet spot somewhere in the middle there. And what Timber Falls methodology suggests is that you can just take the average of these two numbers. Let's say 0.009 is like the ceiling, and then 0.004, let's say that's the floor. Like that's the lowest chip load you can get, right? So he just takes the average of those two. And that's what this section does. I'll do this one, for example. We'll do 1/4 inch bit on hardwood. All this is the manufacturing suggested chip load, 0.004 plus 0.009 divided by 2. It's literally just the average. So I calculate that for all these. And then down here, I only put this in here just to make math a little bit easier down below. And so again, you can specify like what size bit that you want and it'll automatically upload or update. So all this is just a match function. And so it'll essentially say, all right, you input 0.25 and then hardwood, it's going to find this number and report it here. The reason they're different is just because of rounding. So it's the same number. So this is our chip load goal. And if you want, you can stop here. This is the information that's super important to us. Like, what is our chip load? And then from there, you can do your own feed and speed calculations. I went a little bit further just because I'm still pretty much a beginner. And so I just wanted to make sure I had all my bases covered. So let's say, from what I've heard, the router, like this, the butter spot for a Makita router is like dial number 3. And so I have some settings over here. And so let me change that to 3. And then I actually have another calculator down here that kind of does some math backwards. It's pretty much the inverse of that. So if I come in here and say, let's say my feed rate's 224 inches per minute, then that will give me a perfect chip load, right? Then I have a section here that says, can I use this? If you want to, mess around a little bit and say you go to like, just 16,000 flat, you can still use that. But if I were to, just to show you, if I were to come down to like let's try 175. So if I were to do that, then no, I cannot use these settings because it doesn't reach our chip load goal. So if I do like 180, then I kind of get in the yellow zone, and it'll tell me like, hey, increase your feed rate or decrease your RPM. So maybe if I do like that, I might have to go further. So I could, that could be an option. But yeah, that's kind of how this calculator works. You can, honestly, this is like the most important number. You can mess around with your feed rate and everything else and your RPMs. But if you know what you want to run your router at, I think I've heard that, when it comes to horsepower to RPM ratio, router like setting number 3 is like perfect, or 2.5 or 3, somewhere around there is like perfect. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll come down here and I'll literally just specify like, all right, that's what I want. And it'll tell me that the optimal feed rate is 224 inches per minute. So I'll put that in Fusion, or if you use Vectric, you can put Vectric. You can use Vectric. So that's kind of how I calculated this. It's just something to help me. I hope it helps you. If you see something in here that could be better, or that doesn't make sense, or that is just straight up wrong, let me know in the comments, and I'll be happy to change it. I'm by no means an expert. Again, I'm just beginning all this stuff. I'm probably only a year into it, and so I'm still learning a lot of things. And so any advice is helpful. This will be available for download for free. So feel free to use it. I hope it helps, and thanks for watching.